Hey guys, I'm Morgan Moore, and we're back with another episode of the OEMC podcast, Answering the Call. And I'm pretty sure we're going to hit this one out of the park. We're joined with Matt and Kayla, some of our managers of emergency management, and it's baseball season. I couldn't be more excited. I'm ready to get to the ballpark, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. Kayla, what do people need to know about staying safe at the ballpark this spring?
So staying safe is always an important initiative and priority for the Office of Emergency Management and Communication. So what we've kind of started working on here as part of our Safe Chicago program is getting into venues and event experiences to make sure that we're just keeping our people who are going to concerts and baseball games and football games, whatever the case might be, how do we keep them safe? How we want to keep them safe is to get them equipment, because sometimes there is a delay in response for emergency services, which is quite normal. But sometimes seconds and minutes actually count, especially in medical emergencies. So we've done a really great partnership with both the Chicago White Sox as well as the Chicago Cubs in their respective ballparks to actually bring life-saving equipment into the ballpark. So both at Guaranteed Rate Field as well as Wrigley Field, you will see large plastic boxes that say bleeding control kit on the outside of them. At Wrigley Field, they are the beautiful ivy color, and then at the White Sox Field, they are a red color, but it says bleeding control kit. It's publicly accessible, which means anyone can use them if they see it in their periphery and are able to help respond in the event of an uncontrolled bleeding emergency. Inside each wall station, there are 8 individual bleeding control kits. Each individual bleeding control kit contains a lot of different contents to help stop the bleed and really give that person that extra chance to get to the hospital and get that taken care of. So what it means for us in each individual kit, there's a combat application tourniquet, which is a pretty easy tourniquet to actually use. There's gauze, 2 packs of it in the event you need to pack a wound. There's PPE, like your gloves, to put on once you start rendering aid. There's also an emergency trauma dressing wrap, which is kind of like an ACE bandage on steroids to aid in additional first aid help. There's also trauma shears if you needed to cut through and remove clothing to get to the actual site of the injury, because maybe it's hidden from clothing, especially in Chicago. If it's going to be cold, maybe on the opening day of baseball season, for example, you might have multiple layers on, or dark colored clothing can hide an injury as well. So sometimes it's important to cut through clothing and be able to see the actual injury itself and address it properly.
Last season, some of them are already up. Where are they placed? If people do need one, where should they go?
For the Chicago Cubs, they currently have 21 wall kits, so those large plastic boxes with the 8 individual kits inside of them. They have 21 of them throughout the entire ballpark. For the White Sox, they have 43 kits all throughout, again, those same large plastic boxes with 8 individual bleeding control kits inside of them. So substantially saturated throughout the entire ballpark for both respective fields. We have them at every single gate, both for the Cubs and the White Sox. You'll see them on the various different levels of each ballpark, depending on if you're on the 200 level, the 300 level, or what have you, throughout each different ballpark. You'll see them all around. Generally, they're also located near large concession stand grouped areas. So again, you can always just keep an eye out for them. They're really littered throughout both ballparks. So keep an eye out for them and help keep your friends and family safe.
Obviously, if you've been to a game, you know there are first responders there who can come in an event. But like you said, seconds really matter. What are we looking at here, Matt? What's like the timeline if you can get a tourniquet or pack a wound, almost instantly versus even just a minute or two later?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you think about the ballparks on a busy summer day, they can be crowded, especially the concessions area, the aisles going to and from your seats. Any type of emergency can occur anytime. It doesn't have to be violent in nature. It could be anything from, a foul ball strike to a splintered bat. To any sort of other, normal medical emergency occurring in the stands or concessions. And while first responders like EMTs and paramedics are present along with security staff at all our ballparks, it still takes time for them to respond through the crowds. And with these kits mounted all throughout the ballparks, you have, the advantage of time on your side for once while you're waiting for those first responders to arrive to your location. So when we talk about a severe life-threatening hemorrhage, we're talking somebody who could lose all their blood in their body in under 3 to 5 minutes. So a very quick amount of time, well before first responders do typically arrive, right at that point there. And so with these kits, as soon as you make access to them and bring these contents to the patient, you could immediately stop one of these life-threatening wounds and kind of bridge that gap until those first responders arrive, and they take over and provide that more advanced care. So we always say our three basic, tips that anybody can do, even without prior training, is pressure. You can do that without any sort of supplies inside our kits. You just do that with your two hands or even your knee. The other tips we could do is wound packing, where you can actually take the shirt off your back, a jacket, rags, towels, anything that's within arm's reach of the patient during the emergency, and you can actually pack that person's wound to create a clot until they can receive more advanced care. And then lastly, in no specific order, is the tourniquet. This is kind of like the godfather of bleeding control, used on any of the four limbs for a life-threatening hemorrhage. This is certain to stop a bleed if used appropriately. So as Kayla mentioned, all these supplies are in these bleeding control kits and trauma kits across the two ballparks. And there are instructions inside on how to use them if nobody's ever heard of them or seen them before. Obviously, we encourage folks to go online to our website and take a little online class and get a little lesson on them. But even if you don't, if the emergency strikes, you'll have the opportunity to do just in time.
You guys are working with the teams to train all the employees too, not just the first responders on site, but those people who might be working security or concessions or different things are also getting trained on how to use this.
Yeah, they totally are. We're working with both the Cubs and White Sox separately on some great training initiatives because obviously if we have the equipment on site, we want folks to also know how to use it. And especially, as you said, Morgan, those individuals who are working at the concession stands, security personnel at the front gates, or whatever the case might be. We've been really fortunate to work with the Cubs, for example, and we trained 97 individuals ahead of opening day at Wrigley Field, which is great. It's the most actually we've trained for them in the last 2 years as part of this partnership in one shot. So we're really excited. They have 97 people now trained in Stop the Bleed and know where their kits are throughout the ballpark. With White Sox, they've been really pushing also the online training portion since obviously there's so many people that work at a ballpark for any given day and a lot of part-time employees. So in order to get the most reach, they've been sending out the online Stop the Bleed class to their entire staff cadre, which is also available if anyone wants to go to our OEMC website or through the OEMC phone app. You can also access the online Stop the Bleed class. You just miss kind of the hands-on portion, but it's all the great same information about the contents in the kit and how to use those contents to help stop uncontrolled bleeding.
I know obviously this is not visual, but sort of like how easy is it? Like, what kind of things, if you were just telling somebody really quickly how to put on a tourniquet or what they need to do to pack the wound?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, packing a wound, you can use the medical supplies in our kits, or you could use even the shirt or sweatshirt off your back. It depends on what you have available to you at the time of the emergency. But truly as simple as whatever, article you have, whether it be clothing or obviously preferred is our compressed gauze in these bleeding control kits, you would just take it and it would slowly unroll. It's Z folded in like the shape of a Z. And it just, as soon as you open that package, it rolls right out. And you would just continuously pack that wound with that gauze until you can't fit any more gauze inside that wound. And then you would just hold pressure with both your hands or your knee until, first responders or medical personnel or security arrived on scene. In terms of a tourniquet, super easy. A tourniquet is really basic. They've been around for hundreds of years in different shapes and forms. All it is a compressing belt is really what you want to think of it. It's nothing more complicated than that. And once you have this belt around one of the person's limbs, the affected limb, once you tighten it all the way and start constricting it using the windlass on it, it's kind of like a little rod on it that you twist, you'll start seeing noticeable, blood loss decrease as you operate this tourniquet. And they're designed to be placed on in as little as 10 to 15 seconds to quickly stop that wound. So, all these instructions are included inside each pack, inside each wall kit. And it's also good to remember that, at this point, you should be on the phone with 911, right? So when you're talking to our 911 dispatchers at OEMC here, they can give you these same instructions over the phone as well. So do not be afraid to call 911 for that assistance over the phone before those medical personnel arrive.
Anything else people need to be aware of as we get ready to head back to the ballparks and opening days are quickly upon us?
I think it's exciting. Baseball season's upon us, and summer in Chicago is the best season in Chicago. And we want everybody to be safe as emergency managers. It's our job to prepare and educate our citizens, our residents, and all of our tourists and guests on the best safe practices they can have. So obviously, we want you to enjoy baseball season, and we just want you to be safe. So if you just take a little bit of time to, check out our 30-minute online class, do a little bit of research for you and your family before you go to the ballpark, so you can have a much more enjoyable season. And go White Sox.
All right, thanks, Kayla. Thanks, Matt. And we will have a link to the online training course in the show notes of this episode. Or like Kayla and Matt both said, you can find those on our website or in the OEMC app, which please download if you haven't already. It's in the App Store or Google Play. And Matt said it earlier, so I think that gives me permission to as well. Let's go Sox.